Let's fucking do it!
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to the Strange and Beautiful Book Club. We're back, y'all. We're back. Pip's back, too. Aren't you, Pippin? Now that our pod lab is not in a separate building, Pippin can be back, so he's here.
Well, it's kind of in a separate building, but it's in a separate building that we live in part-time.
Yeah, that Pippin can be here, and he can purr on my lap and be so excited that we are going to talk about The Planet of the Apes. The book.
The book!
I honestly did not know it was based on a book, and then I was looking at books for us to do that had movie adaptations, and I was like, holy shit. Planet of the Apes is based on a book? By a man named Pierre
Boulle.
Wait, no, he's got a lot more names. Pierre.
Pierre.
Gotta channel my French. Pierre Francois Marie Louis Boulle.
Good job, honey.
Thank you. Or Pierre Boulle, whatever you want to go with.
How old was he?
He was born 20th of February 1912. He didn't die until the 30th of January 1994. So he was 82 when he passed away. He wrote exactly 2 novels. Well, he wrote more than 2 novels, but he has 2 successful novels that were adapted into film. And it was The Bridge Over River Kwai and Planet of the Apes. And he actually wrote The Bridge Over River Kwai in 1952. And then 11 years later, he writes Planet of the Apes.
Interesting.
He was an engineer and a secret agent in Singapore. And he got captured and was in forced labor for 2 years. And I feel like you can see that in his, there's definitely an undertone of dislike for bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
You're not the boots on the ground, so fuck you.
And the dehumanizing effect of being held prisoner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a very good point because we start the book. Actually, the book is a lot different than the movie. And we will be doing the movie. We will not be doing all the movies right now. I'm not rolling them out forever. There's like a fucking lot. There's the initial 5. So in 1963, he publishes this book, which is originally in French, and it's La Planète, Monkey Planet in French.
Monkey, yeah.
La Planète. Anyway, it's originally translated as Monkey Planet, and later they were like, maybe Monkey Planet. It's not melodious. Let's go with Planet of the Apes. And then in 1968, they make the movie into... they make the movie in 1968. The Charlton Heston, You Goddamn Dirty Apes.
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes, with the Statue of Liberty at the end. And then they go on to make 5 films in the original series, going from 1968 to 1973. And then they bring it back for the Tim Burton ones. And now we are once again revisiting Planet of the Apes. So this goes on to spawn.
But this is Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, it's like Rise of the Guardian of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Solar System of the Apes. It's the longest fucking title. And I just fucking can't remember it. So we'll just leave that there. But he thought that this novel was unadaptable.
Interesting.
I don't
Maybe for special effects at the time, he wasn't optimistic.
Yeah, he was probably like, what are we going to do? Put people in those gorilla suits. The gorilla suit from Trading Places where that guy thinks that it's an actual gorilla,
yes.
But it's just a man in a gorilla suit. It looks like a man in a gorilla suit. And you're like, no one in their right mind ever believed that was a man, not a man in a gorilla suit because it looks like a man in a gorilla suit. That's kind of what I would think he was thinking is, oh no, we're going to put everybody in these shitty masks. And hair suits. And they're just going to walk around. I mean, they end up doing a really good job.
Yeah, they did the like full face prosthetics so that the ape mouth moved.
Yeah, and I've seen the first one, the OG one, and it's I was like, okay, I believe that those are ape people. Sure. Actually, in the book there's three different he refers to them all as monkeys, but they are chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas.
Right. And so there's a distinction between monkeys and apes, where monkeys have tails, apes do not.
Yeah.
And they're separate branches of the
right, but he calls them all
tree.
Monkeys, and they all call
and
them each other monkeys.
Probably just a remnant
translation.
of like French language probably doesn't emphasize a distinction between monkeys and apes, except in biology.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So we kind of start with there's three people on a spaceship. There's Ulysse Mérou.
Well, we start out with two people in this bubble solar sailing ship.
Yes, there is a frame story. There is a larger story in which the smaller story is taking place. And these people are like snooty sails. Like, I got snooty the sailboat.
Solar yachtsmen.
Yeah, they're snooty solar yachtsmen yachting through space by like contracting and expanding the orifice that absorbs and repels solar rays or whatever.
Yeah,
so
it's
they
like
can
a resizable sphere with like shutters in different sides.
This is the exact description of the spaceship that they use in First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells, where he builds the sphere of he builds a sphere of glass, and then he creates shutters of this metal that is invisible to everything, including gravity. So when the shutters are closed, even gravity is ignored. Light is all energy, all radiation is ignored. And so you can launch the spaceship by just closing all the shutters. And then since gravity now no longer works, you just yeet yourself out into space. He accidentally almost yeets all of the air in Earth's atmosphere out into space too, but that's a whole other story. But that's exactly how, like, the opening and shutting of the shutters is exactly how it works.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I've heard this description before. Okay. Yeah. This was like a really interesting transition between the old school sci-fi, where it was like, I think at one point it's like, shall I describe to you how this spaceship worked? And I was like, please don't. Because we were listening to it on audiobook together while we were on a long trip, headed up to see John Kapelos. And I was like, oh, let's listen to it. This will be fun. It was only like 5.5 hours long. And there were definitely parts where it was like, wah, 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 wah. Like, oh, thank you so much for telling me how you reached the speed of light and how it took a year to get to the speed of light and it took a year to slow back down. And, oh, Jesus. But we start with the frame story, which is contrived but effective. And it's these two yuppie people yachting about space. And they're like...
fucking each other.
They're like, oh, look, George. Look out the window. There is something outside. It's a green glass bottle.
A message in a bottle.
A message in a bottle comes floating by. And they're like, cool. And so they send out their little net and bring it in. And they're like, oh, look, it's a novel in a bottle. Because they're trying to get it out.
It's a big fucking bottle.
How did he get it in? They can't get it out. He ends up having to, like, he unstoppers the wax and he's like trying to tease it out. And she's like, no, hurry up. And so they smash the bottle and then they're like, oh, let's read it. And it's written in the language of Earth, which the guy says, oh, that's good because I was partially educated on Earth. So I'm fluent. It's no problem. And so he's reading the language of Earth, which I guess at this point is French because that's the language that the book is written in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I have a record of a human life. And she's like, human? And he's like, shut up. I'm trying to fucking read. Because every time he says man or human, the woman goes, man, human. And I was like, oh, they're fucking chimpanzees. So I would like to note that I called it.
Good.
Yeah. And Matt was like, oh, yeah, good point. And it didn't help that the audiobook narrator used a specific accent for monkeys. And he used it for the people at the beginning.
Yeah, he used a very neutral, like, American.
It was a British man trying to have an American accent
Yeah.
ineffectively.
Yeah, so the apes had an American accent and the humans had a French accent. Or a
More
British
British.
accent.
Yeah,
I
more
mean,
British.
Yeah,
Yeah.
British.
And so what you find out is there's this guy, Ulysse Mérou. Ulysses, basically. Ulysse Mérou. Anyway, and Ulysses, as in the guy who travels forever and gets lost. And it's metaphorical is what I'm getting at here. He's Ulysses. And then he is actually the journalist.
Right.
And there is a scientist whose name is Dr.
Antel.
Antel. And then there's his bro dog, his like
Assistant. And I don't remember his name.
Protege, other guy.
He doesn't last long.
He's in it for like 2 seconds. He does not make it. He's the cautionary tale.
He does not comport himself well, and
he's the cautionary
dies with
tale.
no honor.
And a chimpanzee named Hector.
Yes, an
Yeah.
Earth chimpanzee
And
named Hector.
They're gonna go visit Beetlejuice because it's right there. It's giant. They have questions. They can get to it. Let's go. So they get in their spaceship.
So I wanted to mention that this fits along with your observation on old school sci-fi, where it primarily consists of a quirky scientist person invents a novel mode of locomotion.
Yeah.
And in this situation, these like almost light speed rockets have existed for a little while. And this scientist, this older guy, Dr. Antel, is the one who invented them.
Yeah.
And they've only been used for kind of shorter distance trips. And he wants to visit somewhere very far away, kind of to set his legacy, to set a milestone that basically nobody else would even try for.
Yeah.
Because it's hundreds of light years away. And so that's where we're going.
Right.
He's got these two people with him, his assistant and a journalist, and he made sure nobody had any familial attachments or anything because they're going to be gone at least 700 years
Yeah.
before they get back to Earth.
Because they're going to travel at almost the speed of light, as
Right.
close as is theoretically possible to
The speed of light minus epsilon.
Yeah. So takes them a year to get up to speed and then a year to slow down when they get to Beetlejuice. And this is actually almost the exact plot of Men in the Moon now that I think about it, because Men in the Moon, the guys that go on the spaceship is the quirky scientist who invented the spaceship and his like non-scientist buddy, which Ulysses or
Who has
Uli
more business savvy.
is
right?
actually like the journalist. Yeah. And the other guy's a businessman. And then ultimately they leave the professor behind both times.
Yep.
Because he goes native.
So Pierre was an H.G. Wells fan?
Yeah. I mean, these people talked to each other. They informed each other.
Mm-hmm.
They were all having the same conversation. They were just having it through books. So it's really interesting to read all of the books from this period and kind of like, you know, it's what's happening right now in like the romantasy world and the fantasy world, and it to some extent in the science fiction world too, but we can't see it because we're not removed yet.
Right.
So it's interesting because we are so far removed from this particular period of science fiction that we can look at it and go, oh, look at y'all. Y'all are having so much fun together. I'm so glad you had each
Right.
other.
We only have perspective on what was a common thread happening because we can see the downstream effects
Right.
of that kind of that precedence
And that
was
like
happening in the
that
moment.
microcosm, that little cell, that chunk of time in which these books were written is over. And
Right.
we've wrapped up that conversation, and that party is over.
Yeah.
And we can look at the party, but we can't visit the party. And so we can see the party in its wholeness from start to finish. And Pierre's kind of on the end. He's kind of on the end. The 60s is like your golden age. So we're moving out of the like earlier sci-fi period. So you can kind of see it. And it's kind of cool. It's neat. It doesn't matter. He gets there. We get some elaborate description of how it works, but also who cares? We do know they have to go at 1.5 times gravity, and which is good.
That's the acceleration.
Which is great because he spends the entire book naked. So
right, so he spent 2 years at 1.5 times Earth gravity, and so he's pretty fit.
It's kind of like when Goku trains in the gravity pod.
Yeah.
At like 7 times gravity.
Yep.
And it's like
exactly
time dilated too. So it's like, I've been training for 500 years at 7 times gravity. Yeah, basically like that. So he gets out, they get out, they land, and they're like, oh yeah, this is fucking great. This looks just like Earth. This is amazing. I'm going to name it Soror, which is like sister. It means sister in Latin.
Yeah.
And they go off on a bit of a journey. And immediately Hector's like, peace out, y'all. And he like runs off into the trees. They're like, Hector, no. Actually, they send Hector out first. And they take his little helmet off. And they're like,
to make sure the atmosphere is breathable.
They're like, deep breaths, Hector, deep breaths. And Hector's like, fucking fine, I'm fine. And they're like, okay, great, perfect.
So Hector is disposable from the beginning.
I know, poor Hector. He's the first cautionary tale because he yeets off. He's like, y'all, peace out. And he leaves. And they're like, oh no, Hector. So they go off on a bit of like let's maybe find the monkey, but also like maybe just go see what's going on. And they find a pool with a waterfall. And they're like, oh, heck yeah, we can go swimming. And they look over and there's a footprint. And it's a human footprint. This is what I was like.
They just arrived on this planet and there's a barefoot human footprint.
Yeah. And this is when I checked out mentally. I was like engaged.
I knew you were going to at this point.
Oh yeah, this is going to be good.
And then they were reading the book before we listened to the audiobook and I got a little bit past this part and I thought, oh, Rachel's gonna love this.
I love how I am the voice in all of the people that I do book clubs with, because now Kate and Hannah will be like, I knew you weren't going to like that part. So there's definitely a little Rachel voice that goes, what the fuck, in the back of everybody's head when this stuff pops up. And I'm happy to be here. So they see the footprint and they're like, oh my God, that is a woman's footprint. You can tell because it's delicate and dainty and beautiful.
And graceful and elegant.
Graceful and elegant. And look at those clean, delicate lines. As someone whose footprint would be completely identical to a small-footed man, I object. I object. So they're like, oh, if there's a woman around here somewhere, y'all. And they're like, oh, yeah, because it's just been 3 dudes on the spaceship for 700 years, okay? And they're fit. They're super fit. It's been them and a monkey. There's a woman. They want to know where she is. So lucky for them, she pops out.
Maybe there's a reason the chimp is running away.
Yeah. Gross. It is Planet of the Apes. How did they get here? So this woman pops out from behind a bush and they're like, oh my God, she is the hottest thing I have ever seen. First, they describe her as childlike.
Right.
Yeah. They're like, wow, what is she, like 12? I don't know. She's so beautiful. Look how beautiful she is. She's so shapely. She's so, we go on and on and on about how pretty she is and how shapely and how buxom and how curvy and how.
And it's a repeated theme throughout the whole book that her form must imply a rational mind. They're not connected, y'all.
Yeah.
And he just cannot get past it.
It's okay because he fucks the brains
so
into
physically
her.
Attractive and she's like animalistic, like feral.
Yeah. They are the animals. Our roles are reversed. So she pops out and they're like, oh my God, it's a goddess. It's a goddess. And then they name her Nova. Ulysses names her Nova. He's like, she is Nova because she is like a goddess. And you're like, oh, okay, great. That's great. And so they sort of lure her in and they're playing a game which involves, it's just like chase. And he's like, this is so infantile. This is so gross. But she's hot. It's fine.
The water's only waist deep, so
yeah,
we're all getting a show.
Yeah, it's fine. Everybody's naked. It's all good to go. And then he smiles at her and she freaks the fuck out and runs away. And he's like, oh, the poor thing has no thoughts, just vibes. And you're like, nobody knew that showing your teeth in the animal world is like a threat?
Which later on, this point of view character goes into great detail about their depth and breadth of experience in like animal behavior labs, like with studying the works of people like Pavlov,
Yeah.
and probably B.F. Skinner was another big guy
Yeah.
for animal behavior, psychology, neurology,
Yeah,
whatever.
he insinuates that he's up on animal shit. Like he knows
Right?
a lot about animal
And
behavior.
he doesn't realize, he doesn't remember, it slipped his mind that, oh yeah, you don't show your teeth to primates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No, he doesn't
No.
remember.
He's like, but I looked so nice. I tried to make it as cheerful and open and like kindly as I could, and she was mad at me about it. And I'm pretty sure that means she's not that bright. She's just not that bright. And that's a real shame because she's just so fucking pretty. And so they leave, they get dressed. And then they come back the next day. They go back to their launch. They come back.
Yeah.
And when they come back, she comes out, but she now has friends. She has brought her whole tribe. And so they all start playing. And they're like playing a game. And they try to make the game more complicated to see if the humans can keep up. And then ultimately the humans are disappointing. They're like, oh, we can't have a conversation with these people. They're just animals. So I don't know what they expected. Were we going to travel all the way to Beetlejuice? You found actual humans.
Right. He goes into such detail, such repetition on the idea that they can't even communicate.
Yeah.
They don't have any rational mind. Nova went back, convinced everybody that they needed to come with her
Yeah.
to this particular place, and that just one person should do the initial approach. They coordinated all of this.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, they're so dumb. Bless.
Right.
Bless.
So it's kind of a blind spot on the Ulysses part,
Yeah.
that he's not observing that they are exhibiting coordinated activity
Yeah.
that requires some kind of communication. Yeah.
And honestly, so in the movie, of course, the twist, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, it's been 50 years. Catch up. If you haven't seen it, doesn't matter. The twist at the end is that they're actually on Earth because we find the Statue of Liberty, and all this time he thought he was on another planet, and that
Which is a lot more plausible than 300 light years away.
Yes,
There's
that's
an
what I was
Earth
getting at.
identical planet.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah.
was getting at. The one thing that to me was like a big glaring, I'm having a hard time suspending disbelief in this book, was the fact that the planet orbiting Beetlejuice was exactly like Earth. And the
Same
humans,
gravity, same air,
Yes.
same biology.
same biology. The humans were not the dominant species, but the monkeys that were the dominant species were the exact same monkeys that would have been the dominant species on Earth.
Right,
Chimpanzees,
the
gorillas,
closest,
and apes.
Yeah, some of the closest relatives to humans
Yeah.
on Earth are gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had those three exactly the same as they would have been on Earth. And then the culture is identical.
Right.
They drive cars. They wear the same kinds of clothes. They have umbrellas. They have flashlights. They have books.
It's just the language is different.
Yeah. The only thing that's actually creatively different is the language they speak. There's bananas. There's locks. Everything that you have on Earth, you have on Sora.
Yeah.
And that part to me was like, oh, I don't.
Right. And we're not going to provide any sort of justification about. Well, you could say, oh, maybe this Sora and Earth were both seeded by the same life, hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago.
Yeah.
And that's why things developed so similarly.
Yeah.
But it's hard to kind of keep that in mind, like suspend disbelief for the sake of the story that,
Right.
oh, just by happenstance, this professor decided, I'm going to shoot for that big bright star. And, oh, wouldn't you know, there's a planet just like Earth.
Yeah, there's
So,
Earth 2 all the
I
way
can
over
see why
there.
the movie made the twist different.
It's a better narrative.
It's a better narrative.
It's a better narrative.
So much more plausible to say it's
I think if you reframe
the whole time.
If you reframe it as a commentary, that this isn't Sorer, it's planet social and political commentary. Mm-hmm. It makes you're like, okay, all right, it's fine. Yeah, it's like Star Trek, except that he didn't extrapolate. He wasn't like, oh no, they're not black people, they're Klingons. He was like, no, they're not chimpanzees, they're chimpanzees. He didn't. He just was like, bloop bloop, copy paste. It's fine. It's fine. Ultimately, they get out of the water. They put their clothes on, and the people are like, "Oh no, we don't wear clothes here." And so they rip the clothes off of them, and then chase them back to their launch, break into their launch, which is like their rocket ship,
and then rip it apart.
Their shuttle back to their main ship, which is in orbit, and they trash it. And they're like, "Well, shit. What do we do now?" I feel like a group of humans should not have been able to beat down the door into a shuttle.
A metal space vessel.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, here we have to go, it's commentary, y'all. And just leave it.
They used a plot device that was attached to the outside of the ship. Yep.
Yeah, they just beat it with the plot hammer, which there's a couple plot hammers in this book, so it's fine. So they are like, well, fuck, all right, we live with you guys now. So they follow them back to their home, and they're like, oh no, lay down in the nest with the beautiful women. Oh no. So of course Ulysses.
Nova chooses Ulysses.
Of course. Ulysses is like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to go snuggle with a naked woman. Oh, this is so sad. Oh, so hard. Hard. Anyway, she gets them fruit too, because they're like, we're kind of hungry. So they like walk up to a group of people eating a raw deer. And the people with the raw deer are like, fuck off. And they're like, oh, we're just so hungry. And so then Nova runs over and she's like, I got this. So she climbs a tree and throws a bunch of fruit down at them. And they're like, oh, she's such a dumb animal. Oh, God, it's just a shame there's no thoughts in that brain. And you're like, you guys were the ones who were starving and couldn't figure out to eat. And she was like, here's food for you.
Right.
But cool, it's fine. We don't recognize different forms of intelligence because only math and science is intelligence. So
propositional knowledge.
Yeah, ultimately they wake up and there's like a sound in the forest, like a loud sound in the forest, and they're all like, oh shit, and they run, and the three dudes are like, well, do we wait for the loud sound or do we follow the people? I don't know. Everyone is running in terror. Maybe also run in terror and then figure out later whether that was the appropriate response.
Stand your ground because you are a king of creation.
Oh my God. Every time Ulysses comes up against something, he's like, I am the king of creation. I am the pinnacle of evolution. And I told Matt I want him to yell that every time he's mildly inconvenienced from now until forever. Also, I will now be going by the nymph of the torrent because that was the second best name in the entire book.
His description of Nova.
Yeah. And yes, Ulysses dubs Nova the nymph of the torrent because they find her by the waterfall. So I am now Rachel, nymph of the torrent, podcast producer. Anyway, they run and it turns out this is like a hunting party and they're being like flushed out of the bush and a bunch of them get shot, including the assistant to the doctor. And he gets separated from the doctor and he gets captured and put in this cage and he proceeds to watch them line up the dead bodies, take pictures with them,
pose them,
take clips of their hair and pin it onto their hats. A guy shows up with a camera and is taking pictures of them with this like group of humans that they murdered.
This is like the first thing that I feel like is informed by his experience as being a prisoner of war.
Yes. Yeah. This like, oh shit, the unbridled cruelty, which doesn't seem cruel to the people perpetuating it.
Right.
Because these are gorillas and the gorillas don't actually see anything wrong with this. It's literally like going hunting. It's like killing some wild boar.
Yep. It's like bringing your game, your deer, boar, pheasant, whatever.
Yeah, your big game hunt in Africa.
You present it aesthetically and take pictures with it.
Do you
And you
think some
take
of them have
feathers
them-
and stick them in your hat.
Do you think some of them have them stuffed and they're mounted on the wall?
Oh, all the other parallels are there.
Yeah. So
So
somewhere
probably.
someone has like a human, like the bear, you know, the bears where they're standing up and they're always in the like.
Oh, my grandpa has a black bear taxidermied and mounted on his wall.
Yeah.
And they had a dog for a little while, and the dog was fucking terrified. So they had to move the mounted bear out of the living room and into a bedroom.
It's kind of like the grandpa from Lost Boys where he's always putting taxidermied animals in the kids' room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a taxidermied owl when I was growing up, and it was always in the room that we would sleep over in, and like the prosthetic, the whatever eyes were in it still had that like reflective glow.
Yeah.
And so it literally looked like there were glowing owl eyes staring at you all night long. And so eventually I'd get up and like turn it around to face the wall.
I had a teddy bear light, like one of those ceramic, like my mom used to go and do ceramics, paint ceramics.
Oh,
and she had a teddy bear light. We had it for a
found
little
one,
while.
or this you had the original.
I have the original one somewhere. It's fucking terrifying
yeah.
because you
It's
put a
nightmare
lamp
fuel.
in it, you put a light bulb in it, and it's supposed to glow, but the only things that glow are its eyeballs, and they
its
have
mouth.
and they have realistic pupils.
Yeah.
Like it looks like a person's glowing eyes staring at you out of the darkness. Mom used to have to put socks over its eyes for me because it freaked me out so much. Also, its toe beans glow, which is not as scary, but the eyes, I was just... Anyway, back to the book. So this is where we really get into the commentary part, because this is when he gets captured. He ends up getting taken to like a research facility and put into a bunch of cages with a bunch of other humans where they're going to
The same way
experiment on
that
them.
humans experiment on monkeys.
Yeah, and other animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're put in cages and they electrocute
Sorry.
them.
Apes.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So they electrocute them. They try to do like ring a bell and feed them a favorite piece of fruit, like a pav. This is when we find out he's like, oh, this is like classical conditioning. I know exactly what's happening here. And his first tactic is like, I'm going to be the fucking best at being conditioned. So they hold out the banana and he's like, my mouth is already watering, bitches. He's like, thank you, Ulysses. That was real helpful. And he ultimately attracts the attention of the lady studying him. But as we go on, we learn about the kind of stratification of the monkey government, because there's 3 distinct branches. There's the gorillas, there's the chimpanzees, and the orangutans.
Or 3 distinct populations
Yeah.
that also fit into analogous bureaucratic niches.
Yeah.
Social niches.
Yeah, because the chimpanzees are like the creative, scientific, like STEM
Exploratory.
class. Yeah, they're the like, they make all the discoveries. They create all the art. They generate all of the curiosity, and they are one of the most populous. And then there's the gorillas, and they do all of the leadership. And if they aren't suited
And
to leadership,
logistics.
they do like brute force roles, like heavy lifting shit.
Yes, manual labor.
Manual labor. And then there's the orangutans, who generally just do like thought work, but they are the like bastions of
Tradition.
the old guard or of tradition, and they can retain in a massive amount of knowledge and are extremely resistant to change. So basically every tenured professor that you've ever met would be an orangutan.
Yeah.
They're just like the people that get in there and get so set in their ways, they flat out refuse to believe even the evidence presented to them with their own
and
own
as a
eyes.
result, hold everybody else back.
Right.
That's
And
what they're
everybody
supposed to
knows it, and
represent.
it's just a generalization of like, yeah, that's what they are. But gorillas like them because they're easily controlled, because all you have to do is pander to their vanity. And here's where we get into the like, oh, this shit's commentary. This is commentary on the types of people that are only good at leadership or brute force, controlling the class of people whose job it is to keep people stagnant. And all of them actively working against the actual creative intellectual caste, which is the chimpanzees. And here's where you can see an engineer who was a secret agent who was in a labor camp for 2 years. It's all
coming out.
Yeah, it's all coming out right now. And he ultimately does stand out by doing math. He steals Zira. He steals Zira. Like, I didn't listen to it. But he steals.
He sketches some geometric proofs.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh shit, yeah." And then she brings him a bigger piece of paper, and he's like, "I'm from here," and he draws the Earth solar system, which he just calls the Sun solar system. Like, okay, this is my sun.
It's called the solar system because our sun is named Sol.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Okay, here's the solar system, and here's your Betelgeuse system. I live here. You live there. I fucking hate it here." And she's like, "Okay, cool, heard." And so she's like, "Oh my God, we can't tell anybody you're like this." And so she ends up teaching him the language and then coming up with this elaborate plot where he's just going to give a speech in this public setting. And public opinion is going to turn so solidly towards him that is going to lead to his freedom and everything he's ever wanted in life. And he's like, "Oh, okay. But in the meantime," and this is one of my favorite parts probably.
Is it really?
They have the mating study where they're going to mate some of them together. So they group the humans in groups of like male, female. And y'all, would you like to take a guess who they give to Ulysses? Nova. Oh my God. How did you know?
Surprise.
It's the nymph of the torrent, y'all. She's back. And he's like, "Oh, okay, you gave me, that's great. Like, I like her. She's fine."
The best one.
And they're like, "Okay, now dance." And he's like, "What?" And so they look over and all the males are dancing around the females and then mating. Like they're doing a mating dance and then achieving their goal. And they're all like, "Oh, these guys, this is so interesting." They're all like taking notes. And he's like, "No, I fucking refuse. No." And so they're like, "Oh, okay." So they take Nova. They're like, "Oh, that one doesn't like women. It's fine. Just take the girl out." So they take the girl out and they give him an old woman. And he's like, "What? No, give me back my Nova." And so he like loses his shit.
Well, they put Nova into a cage with another
like
man.
A big, like a burly, like a himbo, like a big burly dude. And he's like, "No,
and then that guy starts doing the mating dance around Nova and he flips his shit.
He's like foaming at the mouth, attacking the bars.
It's almost on purpose. He goes over the top animalistic to convince them that he is the kind of animal that they want to continue studying.
Right. I think he's embarrassed by it, though. I think it's a little bit, when we meet the professor later and the professor's gone full like, "Well, if I can't beat him, I'm going to join him."
Yep.
It's just a little bit that because he loses himself for a little while after this, too, because they give her back to him. They're like, "Oh, yeah, all right, fine, whatever." So they give her back and he's like, "Cool. All right." And they're like, "Now dance." And he's like, "Huh, fuck it." And so he starts dancing around her. And we leave it there, assuming we know where that
Fade
ends.
to black.
Fade to black. Whatever. I want somebody to rewrite this with the .69 chapters where we get the...
the very, very graphic.
How did it go? Because we find out... I have cat hair all over my face.
You have cat hair all over your lap, too.
We find out
attached to a cat body.
Later, he mentions she crawled over and we engaged in our dance that we had worked out through a subtle push and pull. So it's like she was like, "No, only doggy style." And he was like, "No, I want options." And she was like, "No, only doggy style." And so they've worked out a system. What is that, Pierre? You can't tell me they've got a system and that they had to work it out.
Every other system you have described the mechanics intimately, except for the biological ones.
I know. And we know they're getting it on because Nova gets knocked up pretty quickly. In fact, he pretty much he spends his days hanging out with Zira and learning monkey language and just, hanging out.
Talking,
munching,
and fucking.
Yeah, that's what he do. And he's like, I gotta get out of
For
here.
like 2 months.
He's like, I gotta get out of here. Like it's not the prime spot. He gets fed. I mean, it's bad, of course. He's in a cage and he's being studied and it's terrible. And I get that. It's fine. But also, like, he's living in this cage. He's got nothing to worry about. They gave him a woman who likes him a lot. So much so
Literally the most attractive woman that he's ever seen in his whole life.
Right. And she likes him so much that every time he tries to talk to Zira, she tries to attack Zira because she's like, no, that's my man's. And he has to punch her and get her to, he's like,
A few good slaps.
to her pretty face. A few good slaps to her pretty face. And she would come. Later, he gets a flashlight. And every time she gets mad, he just shines the flashlight at her. And she's like,
He's the spray bottle. Like, tss, tss, tss.
and he's like, sometimes I just do it for fun. Like, not because she's even doing anything. Yeah. He's like, sometimes I just do it for fun. Like I just shine the flashlight at her for no particular reason. And I kind of like it. And you're like, you are such a douchebag. Like you are such a douchebag.
And
I wish he was a likable
a little
character.
bit about how he recognizes that he gets carried away with it, but he doesn't feel bad about it
really
because she's just an animal.
I know. I mean, it's like kicking a puppy. Who gives a shit, right? I don't mean that. I care about puppies.
Right. He's having relations with her, but she's just an animal. And it's not until later that he's like, ugh, I can't believe I ever slept with that.
Well, Zira is like, are you still hitting that? And he was like, well, I mean, she's right there. I'm stuck in this cage. I don't have anything else to do. And Zira's like, you're gross. He's a deeply unlikable character. I think I would have enjoyed this movie or this book a lot better if I cared even one tiny amount about what happens to him. I care in that I want to know, like to solve a mystery. But he could have died and I'd have been like, well, you did not deserve that.
Right.
Because he shows up and he's like, I can't believe that monkeys are ruling this when I am the king of creation. Even when he finds out that Nova is pregnant, he's like, well, great. I'm going to repopulate the planet with its rightful owners.
Right.
These monkeys live here, sir. This is their civilization.
This planet is occupied.
This planet is occupied. You can't just be like, well, it's not occupied by the right people, so therefore it's vacant and it's available.
It's not populated by the white man.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that means it's available. I mean, I don't think that's the commentary that he was going for, but that's what it feels like. You're like, wow, he is so unlikable because every time he is even mildly inconvenienced, he's like, me? Ulysse Mérou? You do this to me? And you're like, they just want you to eat a banana, sir. Like, just eat the fucking banana. Shut up. Like, he is so, and maybe if I had read it, I wouldn't feel that way. But the way the audiobook reader reads him,
still would.
The way the audiobook reader reads him is so pompous asshole. It is deeply upsetting. And then he tried for an American accent and it ended up sounding not American, which works because it's supposed to be like the monkey accent.
Right. It sounds a little off, which fair.
But I love how he writes himself into a corner. So we go for a while. He ends up giving this long-winded speech, which is so impassioned and so intelligent and so persuasive and so worthy of the king of creation and the pinnacle of evolution that he ends up passing out afterwards because it takes all of his spiritual vigor to deliver this message. And you're like, oh, okay, that's all right. That's fine. So he wakes up later and they're like, Ulysses, you did it. You're free. Everyone heard you and they love you now.
You're a free monkey.
Everyone loves you. And he's like, well, I mean, yeah, obviously all they had to do was see me. And so he's like, well, do I get to wear clothes? And they're like, you get to wear suits. And he's like, take me to a tailor. And they take him to a tailor and they're like, I think we can figure this out. I make clothes for gorillas. They're big and weird shaped. I can make weird shaped things for you. And so they make him a bunch of suits. And then he's like, I'm a man now. And then he ends up going on an archaeological dig and they find a doll. It's like a 14,000-year-old doll and he tips it and it's like, Dada. And he's like, oh my God, humans used to have speech. And then they're like, oh my God, they must have had speech. This must have been a human settlement. This must have been a doll made for a human and humans at the time must have worn clothes. And you're like, oh, okay. And then they go back and they're like, well, you know what? Actually, funny thing. We've been doing these studies and we've figured out a way to make people remember genetic memories. And you're like, did you? Did you, Pierre Boulle?
Well, they were just cutting holes in humans' heads, sticking electrodes in there. They figured out the part of the brain that made humans like move their mouths to talk kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then this one lady just started.
Talking about humanity.
I was waiting for the chicks to get a
Stop
little
having
quieter.
a freak out.
Yeah, so they just poked enough humans.
They performed enough frontal lobotomies. They were like, well, I think we figured this shit out.
Yeah, and then this one lady just started reciting memories in the simian language.
Yeah.
About the history of humans on the planet from like 20,000 years ago.
Right, because the monkeys don't know where they came from. And they know they had this long period of stagnation followed by what is now like a period of innovation and
right. Basically,
invention
the
and
last
discovery.
10,000 years, their society has remained the same, except for the last maybe 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what you find out, because this woman knows, and so she helpfully tells us, is humans used to be the dominant species. Obviously, we're the kings of creation and the pinnacle of evolution. And we tamed monkeys to be our household staff. And eventually the monkeys were like, I don't want to pick that up. You pick that up. And the humans were like,
the
wow.
monkeys started mimicking the humans' language. And that mimicry of language developed into actual productive usage of language.
Right. And so over time, they just supplanted the humans because as the monkeys were becoming more industrious and more intelligent and they were adapting more and more of human culture, humans were undergoing a cerebral malaise. I forget exactly what they call it, but basically like we were getting dumber over time because...
Which is like another classic sci-fi novel, The Time Machine.
Yeah.
You have
it's exactly like The Time Machine.
You have the ruling class that becomes complacent, and because they aren't regularly challenged on like how to use their brains, they evolve to not need their brains. And so then
they become
don't,
tiny little children people.
Tiny little children people obsessed with pleasure and recreation and living the easy life. And it's the other society on the planet that becomes...
I think it's like, the Morlocks and the Eloi. Yeah. They become food. They become food for the people down below. Yeah. Including his... Anyway. His plucky little lady that he adopts. Yes. Don't call her a fleshlight. Accurate but gross. Accurate but gross. Which is the vibe you strive for, I think, really. So...
Yeah.
On point. Anyway, ultimately, as soon as they find the doll, Cornelius, who's Zira's fiancé, is like, well, actually, I think it was a really bad idea for you to be here, and I think you should go. Because he's afraid he's going to get hurt, because the orangutans want to... I'm sorry, my mom calls orangutans, and so it's like anything. I have a hard time with the word you grew up with, orangutan. It's orangutan. Yeah. So anyway, the orange ones, they are obsessed with maintaining the status quo. And so they would do anything to maintain the status quo, including Dr. Zaius, which isn't there a song where they're like, Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius?
You mean Amadeus, Amadeus?
Yeah, that one. No, it's Dr. Zaius. I think there's a parody of it where they do Dr. Zaius. Yeah, there's something where they make a Planet of the Apes musical.
What?
Okay, I'm sorry. That's just I'm gonna have to figure that out on my
We'll cover that with the movie adaptation.
I think it doesn't matter. So thank you for coming with me on this journey. You know what? We're back. Okay, we had a whole month off. I moved an entire household in a month, and we're just happy to be here. Anyway, ultimately he comes back, and as soon as he comes back, Zira's like, oh yeah, so Cornelius knew this, but we kind of decided maybe it wasn't really a great time to tell you, but Nova's having a baby. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? I'm going to be a dad.
And the government knows, and they want to keep it a secret.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she's off by herself now, and she's in a good place, and she's going to be fine. And like, she's got the best medical care, but also like, this is terrible, and you're going to have to flee.
This would destroy our society if everyone knew.
Yeah, because you are an anomaly right now. But if you become like, if you start making more of you, that's going to be a bad thing.
Right. And especially backed up with Cornelius's research, which is just reinforcing the narrative that humans were the dominant species on Soror.
Yeah.
And then the three ape races supplanted them.
I love how we never learned their name for the planet. He's like, Soror, and she's like, no, it's, and he's like, shh.
It feels very French.
I am the king of creation, and I just told you what the name of your planet is.
It feels very colonial.
It does feel very colonial.
Yeah, so this narrative that Cornelius has been establishing as like factual history,
yeah,
kind of upends the monkey's origin story for themselves, combined with, oh yeah, this guy, he's starting to have babies that are more intelligent humans, like similarly intelligent humans to the current monkey level intelligence, which is supreme amongst all evolution of intelligent species on the planet. It would be an existential threat to monkey society. So we need to GTFO.
Yeah. And Zira's like, it's cool. I got you covered. I've literally been the plot hammer that has driven you through this entire plot. So it's fine. Oh, yeah. And remember how we found your friend at the zoo? Because we find the professor at the zoo. And Ulysses is like, oh my God, that's my bro. That's my friend. And after he becomes a free king of creation, he's like, I'm going to go spring him. And so he goes and he's like,
honorary monkey.
He's like, you're out. You're free. We can come out. And the guy's like, oh, no, don't talk anymore. Like he's gone full. If you can't beat him,
he's gone full human.
Yeah. And so he's living in a cage with his chosen young.
Never go full human.
God. Well, he's living in a cage with his chosen, quote, young mate. And he's like, you know what, actually, you're living your best life. I'm just going to leave you here. Because Zira is like, we're performing an experiment soon where we're going to launch 3 people, a man, a woman, and a baby into space. And if I put the uniforms on you, they'll never know because they think all humans look the same. And he's like, holy shit, you're brilliant. And he goes to like make out with her. And she's like, I'm sorry, you are too ugly.
You are too disgusting.
You are too disgusting. He's like, well, you don't like, I am Ulysse Mérou. I am the king of creation. I am the pinnacle.
I was willing to forgive your grotesque appearance.
That's literally what he says. He's like, I pulled her shapeless, hairy body against me, and I had like a swelling of passion. I knew not what. And you're like, no, you didn't. Please stop. What is happening? Why are you so unlikable? And he ends up escaping with his kid, which is good because by 3 months, the child is like fluent and can walk. Naturally,
hybrid vigor.
The product of his loins is the most brilliant baby that ever existed. And not only that, but he managed to fuck intelligence into Nova because within a couple of months, she can talk as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, I knew it. I knew as soon as I saw her with the baby, she had woken up because I saw the like gleam in her eye.
had awakened in her.
Yeah, motherhood had awakened her intelligence. God.
But not in any of the other humans on the planet for the last 10 to 15,000 years.
She just starts stitching Mama Bear and Mama on her shirts because that's what you have to do when you're a mother. You just have to label yourself with that at all times.
Maybe she just tattoos it in.
Yeah. Well, she's wearing clothes later because when they're on the spaceship where they literally have no reason to wear clothes because they're on the spaceship for like years alone. He's like, no, you're going to learn how to wear a skirt, but not pants because those aren't womanly, my nymph of the torrent. And so she's fluent. His son is fluent. Everybody's fluent. They get back to Earth because they rendezvous with his spaceship. And he's like, peace out, motherfuckers. And he leaves. They get back to Earth and he's like, oh, thank God.
It's been 750 years.
Yeah, they land. He
get lands
out
near Paris.
And a Jeep drives up, and out of the Jeep climbs a gorilla.
A gorilla in like a military uniform.
And he's like, oh no.
The same thing happened here.
That's the end of the book.
Yep.
I imagine they yeeted off back into space unless he somehow threw a clean green glass bottle so hard it flew out into the atmosphere.
He is a king of creation.
He's the pinnacle of evolution.
Of millennia of evolution.
If anyone could do it, it'd be Ulysse Mérou. So anyway, that's the end of it. And then we come back to our frame story and we find out that the two people that were reading it are chimpanzees.
Yeah.
Because she pulls out a compact and powders her muzzle and she's like, well, that's bullshit. And they're like, yup. And they just flush it down the toilet and that's the end of the book. Like, it's it. That's it.
Isn't it a trilogy? I think he wrote 3 books.
Did he write more books?
Yeah.
I don't know. If Ulysses or Ulysse, I think they call him Ulysse. If Ulysse is the main character in any more of them, I don't think I could do it because he is so deeply unlikable. But I bet it's his son.
Yeah, probably his son.
Sirius? His son's name is Sirius, yeah. And probably Nova being like, your dad was a douchebag. He didn't even dance well. And after a while, he wouldn't even fucking dance anymore. He was just like,
he just shined a flashlight in my face.
You know what you want? Come and get it, bitch. And she's like, fine, but I wish you would dance again. It's like when you're dating.
It makes me feel good when you dance. It makes me feel like you want me.
Yeah, dancing is my love language. And he's like, well, then prepare to feel unloved because I ain't doing that anymore. You're such a douchebag.
I speak 2 languages, French and Simian, but not love.
But not love. I'm sorry, but isn't French the language of love?
That's a huge misconception.
Oh, okay. I've heard it said it sounds like Spanish, but in italics. Did we like this book? I'm glad I read this book because now I feel like I know more about the movie and I want to now go watch the movie and be like, that's not how that happened in the book. Like, I want to have popcorn so I can like eat it while describing things like that in the book. No, the planet was, he's not actually, because you
want to pull a Pierre Boulle in the movie theater?
You
want to pull a Neil deGrasse Tyson?
This is really funny. So Pierre Boulle, he actually wrote a follow-up screenplay to the movie because he saw the movie. Like, they made the movie. He was like, that's not going to fucking work. And they were like, watch. And they made it and everybody loved it. And he was like, oh shit. Like, everybody liked my book. They liked my movie. That's great. And so he wrote a screenplay and was like, I wrote a sequel. Like, I wrote a screenplay sequel. And they were like, yeah, fuck off. Fuck off. We're not using that. And they didn't use any part of it.
Aw.
They wrote their own sequel. They just took it and ran. Hopefully he got paid a lot. Like, I really hope he did. I know he didn't because it was the 70s. They were probably like, here's some cocaine. Smoke the whole thing. You don't smoke cocaine. I know that. Snort the whole thing. And then, oh, here's a pen. Oh, whoopsies. It looks like you signed a contract. Weirdest thing. The cocaine was your payment. See you later. And then they just got in a car and drove off and left him in a ditch. Like, that's probably exactly how the transaction went down. But I like to think that maybe he made some money on this. I have hope. I have some hope. Small amount of hope. Because it's gone on to, it's like 50 years of films at this point. Because the first film is over 50 years ago. 1968. Like 56 years ago.
Yeah.
That's wild. I know they brought Charlton Heston back for the first Tim Burton movie, the first like Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, for a cameo.
Where Helena Bonham Carter is an ape. I was like, they didn't make a Tim Burton. He's not. I was like, that can't be Tim Burton. Helena Bonham Carter is not in it, and Johnny Depp's not in it. And then I was looking at the cast list, and I was like, motherfucker, Helena Bonham Carter is in it. So that's all right. Anyway, he's back, but he's an ape, and he gets his same line, which is like just supposed to be like an homage. But he's like, "You damn dirty apes!" But he is an ape, so you're like, it doesn't make any sense. It's fine, but it doesn't make any sense. And they kind of, we'll do the movie, but they retcon the whole professor thing. They make it make more sense. It kind of reminded me of in World War Z where they have Quislings. The humans that pretend to be zombies.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's like a phenomenon, there's like a psychological phenomenon where when people are presented with something that is like stronger than them, some people will actually try to like appease it, to become it.
Right.
And that's what the professor does, which I think is really interesting because he's supposed to be our intellectual character. And he literally disappears off the map. And then when he reappears, he's already gone. So it's literally like he needed 2 people to get Ulysses to this planet. And then he immediately discards them. What did you think about the book?
It was all right. I wasn't super engaged with it. I think I had a easier time with some of the maleness.
It was
of the
so
book.
male. There were parts where we were listening to it and I had to pause. I was like, I need a minute. The testosterone flowing out of these speakers is thick right now.
Cloying, in fact.
Yeah, there was definitely some cloyingly male parts where you're like, oh, I get it. You're like the best dude that ever lived. And if anyone could just see your dick, it would be a religious experience. I fucking get it, okay? Maybe that's why I found him so unlikable, because he is so male. And he's presented as this heroic character, and he's like smacking the woman around and shining a flashlight in her face to make her run in the corner and hide under straw. And then laughing at her.
So, to reference another book that we're going to cover for the podcast, I read The Quantum Thief by Hannu Ryanimi like years ago. And at the time, I felt like, oh, this is a pretty male book.
Yeah.
But in comparison, it's really not.
Yeah. This was very male. This felt very machismo. Very like, literally, I'm the king of creation. Like, look how badass I am. I'm a dude.
Right.
Respect me because I have a dick. Do you not see my external genitalia? Of course you do. I'm naked. Why are you not bowing before me? That's what it felt like the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when he's going through his period of trying to communicate, like to teach them, to show them that he is like a thoughtful man. And so he will not shut up about how much better he is than literally everyone else. And why can they not see it? And I want
There will be no doubt in their minds that I am a rational creature.
I want someone to create a fake like dating profile for Ulysse Mérou, where he's like, I'm the king of creation. I'm the pinnacle of evolution. I'm literally the smartest man in this room.
And it'll be less toxic than half the profiles on Hinge.
That's true, honestly, actually. God, that would be really funny. He's just so unlikable. And I wish I could put on my 1960s like context lenses and see this in the way it was intended to be seen, because I imagine he's supposed to feel like tragically thwarted at every turn.
Yeah.
And that he's supposed to be seen as romantic for how he takes care of Nova and how he ultimately rescues Nova, because he could have just saved his son, but he saves Nova too. Although, let's be honest, he just wanted her to cook and clean in the spaceship, because I'm pretty sure he insinuates that he's taught her how to do all those things so that now she can do them and he doesn't have to. But it's just, that's what I wish. You know, like when you watch a movie or a TV show and they're driving a car and it's from like the 80s or 90s, so it looks like the shittiest old car you've ever seen.
But it's the hot car.
And if you were watching it at the time, it would have looked like they were driving like the nicest car possible. And you can't get that back. That's one of those things that no matter how hard you stretch, you can't be like, wow, that Corolla would have really hit. Like, you just can't. And you that's what it feels like. It's like I cannot wrap my head around how I'm supposed to feel for this character because I'm too far removed.
Yeah.
And maybe a man would have a better, I don't know. If you're one of those guys that's like, I like God, I like guns, and I like women, you'll probably be like, yeah, he's my role model because I am also the king of creation and the pinnacle of creation. But
nice one.
Thank you. So anyway, I think you should check it out. I think it's worth reading. I think it's one of those books that you like. If you like the Planet of the Apes series and it's one of those things that you're really into, like, it's good. I think it's a good.
And it's not long.
It's not long. 5.5 hours audio. It's a novella, really.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole ton of your time. And in the end, you can be like, oh, okay, like I get it. You can see the parts that they used and the parts that they were like, this didn't work. And I think they kind of imply in the movie that it's nuclear war, but we'll watch it and we'll figure it out. So I think we just leave it there and then we'll come back and we'll watch Planet of the Apes. A brief announcement. I was listening to some of our classic episodes, which are going to be retiring starting effectively immediately. And I have a little snippet that I put in the front of a lot of them that was like, Strange and Beautiful Book Club movie episodes are staying right where they are. And you can enjoy new episodes on our new bi-monthly schedule. And I totally forgot we were going to do bi-monthly. And so we just started doing weekly again. I think we did it for a bit.
Yeah.
And then when we did the vampire series, I was like, every week, because these are great. And then I forgot because it's who I am as a person. And I accept that. And it's okay. So we're going to probably go back to more of a bi-monthly schedule. Bi-monthly minimum. Maybe more.
Yeah.
So you can expect, if we're reading a book, it takes us a while to read a book. So I can't do a ton of book. I can't do a book episode every week, but we can do like this book episode and then we can do Planet of the Apes. And if we're really feeling ambitious, we might do a couple more Planet of the Apes movies. And then next month we will be doing our book and then the movie related to that one. So we're going to try to make the book club, Strange and Beautiful Book Club, make sense the way I wanted it to when we started. And
we've been doing a lot of collaborations with
Cinematic Anarchy,
which has kind of replaced, I think, the Strange Beautiful Book Club, just
random movie episodes.
Movie selection.
Yeah, if you love our movie commentary and you love sort of just a very ADHD approach to discussing movies, we have a ton of fun with Cinematic Anarchy. And I'm pretty sure Blunt Bob and Matt could be best friends. I'm pretty sure they could be best friends.
Yep.
So if you want to go over there and check them out, they're great anyway. Even episodes we're not on, go listen to them. They're good people. And we love being on them. And that's a great place for us to get out our indie movie, obscure movie, fun, random movie commentary. And we're going to be focusing more on book and movie adaptations. So books with movie adaptations. Maybe even movies with book adaptations, because we all know how I loves dramatization.
Maybe a movie based on a movie based on a book.
So 2001: A Space Odyssey? I knew where you're going. I knew that one. You want me to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, don't you? Which historically I shit on at every given opportunity. Fine. One of these days I'm going to do it.
The book was better.
Event. It'll be a big event.
Narratively, the book was better.
2001: A Space Odyssey, the book was better, yes.
Yeah.
And then 2012, the year we made contact, was a sequel to the movie, not the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and the novelization was based on the movie also. The novelization
it was
for
a novel first.
The second one?
Yeah, 2012, the year we made contact, was a novel first, and then they made the movie.
I remember
and then there's
one of the books being based
2049?
on the movie.
There's another one that's like 2049 or 2064 or something like that. I read that one, and then I read 3001. And I got to the part where the lady is getting ready to make sexy times. Because remember the guy that floats off into space? He yeets off into space.
Yeah.
They find him and thaw him and bring him back to life.
Oh.
And he's the main character in 3001. So in 3001... he's getting ready to make sexy times with this woman. And he takes off his pants and she's like, "Oh my God, you've been mutilated."
Oh, right.
And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "You've been mutilated. Who did that to you?" And he was like, "Everybody has this. Everybody's circumcised." And she's like, "No, they aren't." And she dips because she's like, "It's too gross. I can't even look at it." Anyway, all this to say, look forward to more book and movie adaptations, which we are going to attempt to plan in advance.
Attempt.
I cannot make promises that
we'll do our best.
Cannot necessarily keep, because sometimes we just follow our hearts, and I like to think you guys are here because of us, and so following my heart is an integral part of our creative process. But we are going to try to plan in advance, and then you will know what books to read to go with the movies that we'll be watching. So you can look forward to that, and I think that's probably a good place to leave it. We do have a Patreon. Please go join it. We have so much fun on the Discord. We have so many sub-channels now because we discuss such a wide variety of things, and there are not that many of us, so it's a ton of fun. We interact regularly and happily with everyone who is on the Discord, and we just, show your support because we love you, and we like to see that in the form of membership on our Patreon. So I guess we'll just leave it there. So until next, no, you gotta do your thing.
Just as a fact check.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Arthur Clarke did update his novel of 2010 to align with the 2001: Space Odyssey movie.
Yeah.
So the second book is a sequel to the movie.
Yes.
So a movie based on a book, based on a movie, based on a book.
Yes.
Okay. So remember, sometimes the strangest things are the most beautiful too.
So be who you are and love what you love. Until next time, friends.
Bye.
Bye.